Today we're looking at Robert Oster's Australian Sky. Hi, I'm Adam and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, I test them, and I share the results with you. Now Robert Oster's Australian Sky is a blue ink. But before we get to the writing sample, let's take a look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography. Now I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies over the years. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, I put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds and let it creep up. We see we have a very light blue that gets darker as it moves up, but not very dark, which is not a dark ink. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. Now it has no effect. It has not changed the performance of this ink to let it completely dry before I dunk it into that water. It looks exactly the same, and if I covered it up, you would probably not be able to tell which one was let dry and which one was done correctly. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and, more importantly, how hard this ink might be to clean out of your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before I test it. Looking at the highlighter, it actually performed a little bit better than I expected, although it feathered out quite a bit. It doesn't become unreadable. This is not something I would use for note-taking or where, what you have written is important. I wouldn't use this ink, but it didn't destroy it entirely, which was surprising because when we looked at the water droplet for 30 seconds completely removed the ink from the page. It looks like it's not there. Pen Flush did the exact same thing. It looks like it's not there. Both of them look like I have a very, very light blue paper, that if there wasn't white around it, you wouldn't even realize it's a light blue. Now, bleach, of course, completely removed it from the page, but there's no reason to even get to the Pen Flush stage to clean out your pens, which is a good thing. Now, this is a bell curve, or a normal distribution. For the 365 inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5. I've also found that the range of normal is going from 2.1 to 2.9. Robert Oster Australian Sky has a viscosity of 2.01. This means it's a flowing ink. It's a wet ink. Generally, the orange and red I consider wet. The blue and purple I consider dry. So we've got wet, normal, and dry. This is a wet ink. This bell curve is for the average dry time. For the 365 inks tested, I have found the average dry time to be 17 seconds, and that the normal range goes from 13 seconds to 21 seconds. Robert Oster Australian Sky has an average dry time of 19 seconds. Now, how do I find my average dry time for the ink? I use my writing samples. I use the extra fine and the medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those, and that's where I get my dry times. Let's take a look at the writing sample. I got this ink in sample form. And to keep my writing samples consistent, as I always use, I have a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. No bleed, no ghosting. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no echo, no sheen, no color variation. It's a nice light blue. No color variation. We're going to see a lot of that through this writing sample. With the extra fine, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 12 seconds to dry. With medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 19 seconds. Looking at the scrubby, we don't expect color variation. And on a smear, I don't think you could recover it. I don't think you could recover it, not because it's not there. It's a light blue, and that very light blue just is hard once it's smeared to actually see it. Looking at Tomoe River, we have no bleeding, we have ghosting. It's Tomoe River. With the 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. On the extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, none of that. 17 seconds. 17 seconds for this ink to dry. With the medium, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Minor moments of shade. I almost want to call them accidents with this ink, because I see it a little bit with the. And that's it. Other than that, there's no shade. I only see it on the one part of the H in the. And that's it. Looking at the Scrubby, I don't expect to see shading in this ink. It doesn't show there at all. And on a smear test with Tomoe River, we never get to recover it. That's why it's not my favorite ink. Looking at Rhodia, we have no bleed. I think those are aggressive marks from me. We see that a lot. I get a little aggressive. We have no ghosting. With the 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. It's a darker blue than we got before. A little more ink might have gone down, but it looks a little darker on this paper. With the extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 11 seconds. Medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. And 21 seconds, almost twice the time for this ink to dry. And it's just a light blue. That's it, just the light blue. Looking at the Scrubby, the extra fine looks like it should have some shading. It does not occur to me in the writing. But in the Scrubby, it looks like it might happen. I don't see it at all in the medium, which makes me feel like if I use this with a very dry, fine nib, like a Singularity, then I might get the shading in the writing. But if I used it with a broader, wetter nib, I'm not going to get any. Looking at the smear, I don't know that you get to recover this. This is again a result of it being a very light blue ink. We're looking at TWSBI paper. On the TWSBI paper, we get no bleeding. We do get minor ghosting. I don't think it would be too distracting. With the 1.1, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Just the blue. Nothing special. On the extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Maybe some moments of shading. Did I say no shade? I think I meant no sheen. Minor moments of shading, but it's really isolated. So you might get little bits, just not it. I think that drier, thinner pen is what you need here. Medium. 13 seconds to dry. With a medium nib, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Went away. We have 2 moments of shade on the bottom of the and the beginning of jumps. Those are the 2 moments of shade, really isolated. I might have had my thumb on the paper there, and that could have affected how the ink went down. So that might be one of those where you want to just handle the hell out of the paper first. Maybe it'll give you some shading. Because when we look at the Scrubby, we see the extra fine might give some shading. It's very minor that we get here. It shows on camera much more than it does in person. And on the medium, we get no shading that occurs in the Scrubby. So we're not really expecting very much. Touch the hell out of that paper first. Maybe that's what gave me my shading here. I think my thumb was holding the paper down, because that's what it looks like right there. On a smear, this is not going to be recoverable. Another factor of that lighting. Let's look at moleskin paper. It bleeds. It bleeds. It feathers. So looking at the medium at the top, definite feather, definite spread. No halo, no sheen, no shade. Woolly mammoth, look at that A. It just became a blob. With the extra fine, we have feather all over. All over it. The entire thing. We have feathering. Minor spread. Not the biggest spread in the world. Minor spread. No shade. No sheen. 3 seconds to dry. Nothing in the Scrubby shows a shade. And we're not going to recover that smear. So this isn't the worst as you're, again, carrying it. This put minor spots on the page underneath. I wouldn't call it an off-limits thing. I'm not a fan of the Moleskine notebook. A lot of people use them. That's one of the reasons that they're included in all of this. But this isn't the end of the world. As a carry-around notebook, I don't normally really use both sides of those notebooks in my pocket anyway. So that's what I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Robert Oster Australian Sky, I would prefer to find an ink that will complement that light blue color on the page. And I kept thinking of a pink when I was seeing this ink. So what did I think of? Private Reserve Rose Rage. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I'd ask, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you are new here, I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, what I do is I do my writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen and use it for a day. I then put that into a Retro 51 with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. So what do I think of Robert Oster Australian Sky? A lot of times it was way too light for me, but in the Retro 51 that is very broad and very wet, I found that it put enough ink down to make it dark enough to be easy to read. Other than that, I didn't enjoy it and I found it too light for me. Which leads to the big question, would I purchase a bottle of this ink? And simply no for that reason. I do enjoy nibs that have different flows and different broadness, and I don't want to have to baby what ink goes into a pen. Thanks for watching.